Jackie's 27th podcast, recorded live from the English Valley's History Center, May 3rd, 2025, and we're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we're recording live at the English Valley History Center in North English, Iowa. This diary was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libbie Wade. Here's a picture of Lib when she was in the Rebeccas for many, many years with her granddaughters. We'll read and talk about a week in the diary and then switch to happenings around the History Center and feature stories. December 1st, 1946. This is the date on which my mother's mother died in 1848. I think, for Ira was about 1 year old. His birthday was November 6th. Russell was home in the a.m. He and Billy O'Brien went hunting in the a.m. No luck. I was alone in the evening. Wrote to Anna. The folks started to Texas. Lib's mother was Anne Mariah Hinkle Claypool. She was about 12 years old when her own mother died, and she was called home to take care of her 1-year-old brother, Ira Hinkle. Ira always lived near Anne Mariah and is buried at our family cemetery, Yankee Point. Anne Mariah Hinkle Claypool, right here, is my great-great-grandmother. And Libby's in this picture too. She's right here. And all of her older brothers and sisters are up on the top. Russell is Libby's 39-year-old son who lives with her. Russell works at the Home Lumber Company, which is a block away. Since he had the morning off, he went hunting with Billy O'Brien. Billy O'Brien's in this picture. This hangs on the wall in the other room in the History Center. He's in the back row, the second one. He was a brother to Ed O'Brien and Ellen Gregan from this area. Billy and his wife were here visiting his mother, Susie O'Brien, and they were headed to California soon to live. The Anna that she writes to is her daughter. She's right here in the picture with her husband. She lives in Texas.
Thank you.
Lib's daughter-in-law, Jenny Wade, and her daughter, Evelyn, and husband, Wayne Kurtz, and granddaughter, Sue Kurtz, are heading to Texas to visit. December 2nd, 1946. First check for $21. Cold evening. Temperature is near zero in some parts of the state. Coal strike means a lot of suffering to some. I worked on Jenny's table cover. Didn't feel like doing much. Warren had Russell's car to go to Oskaloosa for repairs. Hattie was here. I don't know for sure, but I think maybe the $21 was Social Security. Libby gets her weather and news from the radio. There was a nationwide coal strike. According to Google, the primary reason for the widespread strikes in 1946 was workers' demands for higher wages to offset rising living costs and to reflect their contributions to the war effort. After the end of World War II, with price controls easing and inflation rising, workers sought to secure wage increases to protect their take-home pay. Many strikes also focused on improving working conditions and addressing other grievances. Russell has a new car, so it's often used by others in the family for out-of-town trips, since vehicles were scarce after World War II. His older brother, Warren or Mike Wade, has started a business in town, so the trip probably had to do with his new business. And Hattie, who comes to visit, is Hattie Newberry Killian, her 55-year-old neighbor and friend, and she stops often. December 3rd, 1946. Moderated a lot during the night. Nice today. Visitors were Mary R., Bridgie Wade, Bertie, Mrs. Mabel Butler, Mrs. Jenny Johnston, Bertha and Ronnie G., and Lena in the evening. Mary Wade Gregseger, who is the lady in the back row on this picture, was her egg lady and friend from when the family lived at Green Valley, which is where Bridgie Wade was from. Green Valley and Parnell, too. She was related to Mary Wade Rugsager by marriage, and also to Lib's late husband, Bert Wade. Bridgie's correct name was Bridget, and she was married to William Francis Wade. Bridgie was the great-grandmother of Rita Wade from New York City, who comes to the History Center to visit when she is back in Iowa, and also the great-grandmother of Randy Wade, who is married to Denise and lives on West Washington Street in North English. I am looking for a picture of Bridgie still.
Scott here? Yeah, come on. Sorry.
Bertie Mahana McKinstry was one of Lib's best friends from town. Mrs. Mabel Butler and Jenny Johnson were women from town. Bertha Claypool Geringer, who comes to visit, is my grandmother and also Libbie's niece. And her 4-year-old son, Ronnie, also comes with her to visit. Lena Wallace Wade was her daughter-in-law, the wife of son Warren or Mike Wade. The women were there to visit and sew and maybe work on projects for their church groups. December 4th, 1946. Mildred Cox is home from the hospital. Today, Belva, Lena, Judith, and Frida were here. Hattie was here in the evening. Russell went to Sigourney. Mildred's father is in the hospital there, and also Mrs. Montross. Russell went with the Bruce Warners. Had a card from Evelyn in Springfield, Missouri. Shoots have sold their place in South English. Will move to Kinross. Mildred Cox was Owen Voss's sister and the wife of Cliff Cox, who had a trucking business. Belva Yoss is Libbie's oldest married granddaughter and in her 20s. Judith is what she calls Judy Wade, her youngest granddaughter. She's right here in the picture. She was 5 years old in 1946. Frida McCreary Wade is Lib's granddaughter by marriage, the wife of grandson Walter or Bud Wade. Russell's longtime girlfriend is Mildred Reese. Her father was John Reese. According to the newspaper that week, John Reese was hospitalized with pneumonia. Mrs. Montross that they're talking about was probably Sarah May or Sadie Taylor Montross, the mother of Mabel Lortz and the grandmother of Georgia Warner, who was the wife of Russell's co-worker Bruce Warner. So both couples went to see loved ones in the hospital. Goodbye, Carolyn. Granddaughter Evelyn Kurtz and her husband Wayne and 4-year-old Sue are on their way to Texas with her mother Jenny Wade to see Anna and Richard Cray and family. Jesse and Cloyd Shute are friends of Lib's and grandparents of the Glantz children, and Kay Grove and her siblings, and others. December 5th, 1946. Lena was here, and also Maud. Another nice warm day. The temperature was around 60 degrees at noon on the north porch. Otis was here, was out by Layton's and came in town for noon hour. Bazaar and supper at the church tonight. Had a card from Leona Shute Glantz. Anna Leslie died last night in the Sigourney Hospital. Mrs. Weldon died at Parnell. Maud Claypool was Libbie's friend and was married to her nephew Ray. Whoops, wrong picture. Better be careful about that. Married to her nephew Ray Claypool. Otis Claypool was Libbie's nephew from Parnell. I'll hold that one this way. He works for Iowa County. Winston Claypool told me last week that his father, Leighton Claypool, and family lived out north of town near the electrical plant on the east side of Highway 149, where Mike Mason lived recently. So, after Otis was done working in the vicinity of his cousin Leighton's home, Otis came to North English for his lunch break and stopped to see his Aunt Lib on his lunch hour. The picture is of Otis and his wife, Pearl Polton Claypool, and their oldest daughter, Leora Claypool Woodard, who was the grandmother of Mary Beth Knepfer and her sister Jane Woodward, and their cousins. The church women finally had their bazaar at church. Libbie and her friends had been working on projects for the sale for a couple of months. Leona Shute Glantz was the mother of the Glantz family and a classmate of Lib's oldest granddaughter, Belva. Anna Leslie was an elderly woman in town. I found her obituary that says she was in the Rebecca Lodge with Libbie. Mrs. Anna Weldon from Parnell passed away in 1946. She was the grandmother of Clem Weldon and his siblings. December 6, 1946. Lena and her mother went to Cedar Rapids by bus. Russell was down to George Berry's yesterday. Leck is very sick. He had a heart attack. Ed Slaubaugh is also sick in the hospital. Russell took lumber to George Berry today. Bertha and Ronnie G are also here. Frida and her mother and Mrs. McCurry's 3 grandchildren were here. And also Verdi and Matt Knipfer and Frank. Warren and Lena and Judith. In those days, you could get on a bus and take it to Cedar Rapids to shop or whatever and come back on the bus later in the day. George and Alta Berry were Russell's aunt and uncle, as Alta was Bert Wade's sister. And there's a picture in the Champion Hill book on page 37 of Alta Berry. This book was written by Suzanne Moffat and Scott Romine. And right there is Alta Berry. Leck that they're talking about is Leck Wade. And he was the brother to Libbie's husband, Bert Wade. And his correct name was Alexis George Wade. And he had just had a heart attack. Granddaughter-in-law Frida's maiden name was McCreary. And the other person they're talking about in that paragraph was Maddie Ballard. And Maddie Ballard is right there on the left. And she was married to Frank Knipfer. Her correct name was Samantha Ann, and her nickname was Maddie Ballard. The Frank Knipfer that she was married to was not the same guy that was married to Dolores Crawford. Maddie and Frank had 5 girls: Sylvia, Gail, Lorna, Fern, and Ruby. December 7th, 1946. Mrs. Ed Pope's 73rd birthday. 5 years ago, today, was the attack on Pearl Harbor. Today was warm and cloudy. The temperature is 55 to 60 degrees. Rusty was here. Anna Leslie's funeral is this p.m. Russell is having stomach troubles. 4 years ago today, Jenny and Evelyn were in a wreck near Marengo. Suzanne slid out of the chair that day, too. Rusty Wilkinson was one of Libbie's childhood friends from the Yankee Point area, and she's stopping to visit her today. That's the end of the diary portion of the program for this week. The English Valley's History Center has been operating on Main Street in North English since 2006. The center operates a museum, monthly programming, a community coffee shop, and provides meeting spaces for groups and organizations. These include family and class reunions, celebrations, gatherings, and club meetings. The History Center offers all of its services by donations only. It does not have annual memberships like many other historical organizations and relies largely on private and community donations. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and donations are tax deductible. Your support of the History Center would help continue its operations and provide a valuable community asset. Please send donations to the English Valley's History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa 52316. The acquisition of the week. This is a picture postcard, and it shows a grove of trees. It was brought in by John Jacobs from Rose Hill last week, and it says it's Thomas Park in North English. We think it's Thomas's Grove. And after a little research, we will let Carl Hugendorn explain it to us from one of his columns in the North English Record in the 1970s. Someone asked last week, where was the Grove where North English used to celebrate the 4th of July? The Grove was located on a farm where Mrs. Audie Hahn now lives at the north edge of town on the Millersburg Road. That would be currently, or not currently, but after that, where Charlie Hahn lived, and now it's an empty lot. I think it was called Thomas Grove, and I've seen old pictures of 4th of July events here. One picture shows a group of Civil War veterans being honored, and another picture shows William Jennings Bryan delivering a patriotic address. The Thomas Grove was shaded by big oak trees, and people liked to go there for the 4th of July because it was always cool under those big trees. There still are people around North English who attended celebrations there. They tell that the celebrations there were canceled after a little girl, let's just say, was severely killed on a merry-go-round. People in those days wrote a little more matter-of-factly than we're used to nowadays. Scott Romine said the trees were on the north end of Highland Street, across West Washington Street, at 404 West Washington Street, which is an empty lot now. Our featured story this week is Miller Hardware. Much of the material from this week's broadcast is taken from an article by Matthew Miller, son of Gary and Janie Miller, and a book that Liesl Miller put together. And we also have this picture board. The orange sticker in the center tells all the generations down to Andrew and Matthew. Noah Samuel, Liesl, Leland, Gary, and the brothers Matthew and Andrew. The story was written in 1997. It is featured in the North English 150 yearbook by Scott Romine. Miller Hardware was started in 1920 by Noah Samuel Miller and run until 1946 by his son, Louis or Dutch Miller. Louis and his wife, Imo Reed Miller, had one daughter, Myrna Lee, who was married to Harmon Rose. Their children are my accountant and friend, Stephen Rose, and his sister, Susan. And here is the picture of Noah Samuel, or Sam Miller, and his wife, Rosa Schaff, who was the owner at that time. And in this picture here, on the bottom, are the children, some of the children, of Noah Samuel Miller. Liesl and his twin brother Cecil, who passed at an early age. In the front is Louis or Dutch Miller, and the sister Edith Miller Carter. And Esther Kirkpatrick was also their sister. In 1946, Louis's brother Liesl and Liesl's son Leland and Milo or Shy Blockridge bought the business for $8,000 each. And here's a picture of Liesl and his wife, Blanche Van Auken Miller. They had two sons, Leland and Lauren. And here's a picture of Lauren, who was not in the business. They lived in Colorado, I believe. And then right here on this side is the picture of Leland and his wife, Mildred Lortz Plank Miller. They had two sons, Robert Plank Jr., the father of Mickey and his brother Frosty Plank, and Gary Miller, the father of Andrew and Matt Miller. The main building of Miller Hardware was at 105 South Main, that is now Garcia Carpet. The south part of the building wasn't there then, and the original plate glass windows have also been covered for heat efficiency. Miller Hardware sold implements out of the implement building, which was a big building on Oak Street, East Oak Street, where the apartments now stand. Some of the implements they sold were International tractors, corn elevators, and harvesters. And in this picture, which we've shown before, shows the main floor of the building in 1955. Shown are, starting on this side, Ernest Graham, Leland Miller, Liesl Miller, Keith Kirkpatrick, and Milo or Shy Blockridge. And some of the things they sold were Tappan kitchen ranges, Speed Queen washing machines, the old style washing machine, and stock tanks and V-belts and all kinds of kitchen appliances and small items and rope, which came up out of the basement very cleverly. In the early 1950s, Milo Lockridge left the business. Then Leland Miller started going to houses to do plumbing and heating and repairs. Leland Miller was seriously burned in 1956 by a flammable liquid and spent 7 months in the hospital. He was also cut on the arm severely by a piece of window glass in 1959. Miller's Hardware closed in 1967, and the building was sold, and Leland finished out his career at Nagel Lumber in Iowa City. For more details and further information, please see the North English 150-year book. Next week's feature will be on the Miller Brick House south of town on the road east of the Pigeon Road. The picture that I showed last week was taken inside Miller Hardware in 1954 during the centennial when everyone had beards. I missed someone when I was showing the picture that Jerry Westfall sent. According to Jerry, the men in the photo are, starting on this side, Glenn McKinstry, Carl Johnson, Wayne Baines, Alva Allen, Wilbur Cray, and other places I've seen this person identified as Darrell Woods, Joe Westfall, and the person that I missed last week was Leighton or Happy Claypool, who was the father of Marilyn, Lloyd, Harold, Jean, Winston, and Leighton. His son Leighton is a listener to my programs, as are his grandchildren, Mark, Tina and Tammy, and Linda, and maybe others. And then Bill McKenna and Ira Harris. Correspondence this week. Mark Claypool said, Jackie, this week was a special memory for me. I remember going to shell corn with my granddad Speece when he would work for Perky. I think it was probably in the 8th or 9th grade. It was hard work lifting those scoop shovels of corn, but the extra money was sure appreciated. Thanks for the memories. Fred Speece was Mark's other grandpa. Someone else at the History Center remembers George Dennison Jr., or Buddy Dennison, telling the young corn scoopers on Perky Wade's cruise to be sure to get rubber bands to wear around their pant legs so that the rants would not run up their legs. My brother Lou also commented that most young guys tried scooping corn for at least a day or two, but to remember what hard work it was for those who did it for a living. Connie Holden Hanna, who I saw at the alumni luncheon, had a memory about corn shelling time. She said that all of the men that were not actively scooping corn were leaning on their shovels, waiting to smack rats as they came out of the corn crib. She had obtained 2 white rats at the town celebration, and when she was finished with them, she decided to give them a humane release down by the corn crib, where they would have plenty to eat, only hoping that they did not run out at shelling time and become a victim of the scoop shovels. Connie Brubaker wrote about the story about Jimmy Scanlon. Thank you, Jackie. I have heard the story of the rooster getting struck by lightning. My grandma Hervey had guineas to get rid of bugs in her garden. I thought they were mean. The chickens were fine, but I didn't like the guineas. Always enjoy your podcast. Pam Kavanaugh Shields said, thanks, Jackie, for another memorable broadcast. Loved hearing about the school bus kids. As a townie, I always wanted to ride the bus, so I loved it when I got to go home with friends who rode the bus. Susie Allison Lundberg said, thanks for entertaining me during my workout at the gym, Jackie. You're awesome. Always an interesting and informative and intriguing podcast. And I also heard from my friend, Rebecca Nicholson Miller, originally from Watcher. Thank you, Jackie. I have a few that I need to catch up on. I usually watch on YouTube. Yes, all the weeks are easy to find if you want to watch my broadcasts on YouTube. Regarding the Keller story, my Uncle Eldon Keller sent some pictures of my mom's 17 siblings. Her parents, Kenneth and Kenneth and Francis and Mary Kay and Bobby were already gone when these are taken. In this picture are the sisters, Doris Keller, my mom, Mary Etheldine Keller Abbott, Dorothy Keller, and Karen Keller Nieto. They have all since passed away. In this shot are the brothers, Daryl, Eldon, Gary, Johnny, Kevin, Carol, and Richard. And Kevin is gone now, too. And my own family that were there that day were, in the back, Gary Geringer, Lou Geringer, Chip Geringer, me, Tom and Lisa, Spencer and his dad, Storm Douglas, and Pam Douglas. In front are Kyle Geringer, Michelle Geringer, my mom, stepdad Tom Abbott, and Kimberly Geringer. These pictures were a while ago, as Spencer is now a teenager. I have to tell you some exciting things that have been happening with me lately. I was featured in a story in our local paper in the online version. I put the link to the story on my own Facebook page, and it was shared to the History Center page. I also heard that Jackie Perkins wrote about me in a column in the Sigourney paper. I met Jackie Perkins at the Watch Your Opera House one night when she recognized me from my broadcasts. Jill and Dave Boss are supposed to be saving that story for me to see. And I have over 1,300 views on YouTube now, so I'm pretty proud of that. And more than 1,300 persons are tuning in on Facebook each week to watch. Please keep those likes, comments, and shares coming so that I can continue this program. I've even made up some business cards. There's one. So that people can find me on YouTube. I would also like to mention that the next English Valley's Alumni Luncheon at Bryant's in the Williamsburg Mall will be held at 11:30 a.m. on June 30th. Please contact Alice Stramer or Linda Carter for reservations. And I would also like to give a big shout out to John Reesner for being our photographer at the last luncheon. He is married to Marilee Dillon Reesner from the class of 1969, and we really appreciate his help. Our sympathies this week to the family of Treva Middlecoff, who passed away this week. Treva and her twin, Tressa Cobb, were in the class of 1958. And Treva and Tressa are on the top row in these pictures. This is from the Everyone at EV book. And they're also in the Hinkletown book on this page, showing them when they're in grade school. We also heard this week about the passing of Lyle Miller from the class of 1966. He's right here in this picture. Rest in peace, Titus. And just yesterday, we heard about the passing of Kurt Schroeder, who was a band director at EV Schools many years ago and married to Linda Hedrick Schroeder, who graduated from English Valleys in 1967. Another acquisition we got this week, Brent Kaufman brought in a cap that's from the USS Iowa Commissioning, and a replica of it right here, and this book about the subject. We'd like to thank Brent for this. It's a nice acquisition. There's a flyer on the EV Graduates page if you need more information about when different decades of classes will meet during the alumni reunion on July 26th. The parade is at 10:30 a.m. Starting at noon, snacks and drinks will be available at the History Center, paid for by the sales from the Everyone at EV book for 2025, with pictures of all the graduates since 1957. That book should be coming out pretty soon. I'll get more information from Scott Romine about that. I'll be doing a live broadcast before the parade at 9 a.m. and staying around after the parade to visit with alumni. We are also interested in learning about historical English Valleys items that you might wish to donate to the History Center. Please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, or any board member to donate. And that's it for this week. See you next week.
And that's a wrap. Thanks, Jackie.